Hello, I'm Jen Garrison Stuber, the advocacy for the Washington Homeschool Organization. I'm going to talk to you about homeschooling in the state of Washington. If you have follow-up questions, I can be reached at WHOcontact, that's WHO contact, at washhomeschool.org. So that's wash, and then a second H for homeschool.org. There I am, Jen Garrison Stuber. So what I'm going to tell you this evening is I'm going to tell you homeschooling. You can do it. And I'm going to tell you how you can do it legally here in the state of Washington, because you can. And then I'm going to tell you again that you can do it. Let me tell you first, though, homeschooling's dirty little secret. We are all absolutely 100% of us completely terrified that when we choose this homeschooling thing, we're going to mess our children up for life, that they're going to end up homeless, jobless, friendless, that they're going to be less than, that somehow this choice that we're making for our children is going to have ramifications throughout their lives. And in point of fact, it will, but that will be negative and reverberate through them. Anyone who tells you anything different is one of two things: a bold-faced liar, and that is, by the way, most of us, or second generation. And every time I say this in front of a group of second generation homeschoolers, they say, oh no, Jen, we're absolutely terrified as well, because you went to school, so you know what it is that you didn't provide for your kid when you homeschooled. We didn't go to school, so we're not sure, are we compounding some kind of error that our parents made? We all start out really, really scared going into this. I was doing advocacy work and encouraging other people to homeschool long before myself, that I finally felt like, yes, I know what I'm doing and I'm getting this. And I don't think we talk about this nearly enough, that we have these fears. And so I want to tell you today that it's okay for you to feel fearful about going into homeschooling. We've all been there. We've all done it. And it's okay to tell homeschoolers that you know that you're scared. And they're going to tell you, you know what, we were scared too. But let's tell you about the journey that we've had and how great it's really been. So the legal part of homeschooling in Washington, compulsory attendance in our state goes from age 8 to age 18. A lot of people don't realize this. Everybody sends their kids to school at 5 and head off to kindergarten, sometimes doing Head Start even before that. But you don't have to. Even if you have no intention of homeschooling, you do not have to darken the door of a school in the state of Washington until you are 8 years old. You can legally stay at home until the age of 8. We do have compulsory attendance all the way up to the age of 18. We're one of 2 states to have that late start of 8. The other one happens to be Pennsylvania. All the other states start at 5, 6, or 7, but in the state of Washington, our compulsory attendance, and therefore all of the HBI, the homeschool law, doesn't apply to children until they turn 8. You do need to qualify to homeschool in the state of Washington, and there are 4 ways to do it. The first is to have 45 college quarter credits. This is equal to approximately 1 year full-time college. If you were on a semester system, for example, it would be 30 semester credits, or 45 college quarter credits. The second is to take a parent qualifying course. The Washington Homeschool Organization offers these online on a fairly regular interval throughout the year. The third is to hire a teacher, a Washington State certificated person, to oversee your homeschooling. They meet with you for an average of 1 hour each week to do planning and evaluation of your homeschooling. That's someone you do hire privately if you pursue that option. And the fourth is to gain superintendent approval. This fourth one is really as simple as going down and talking to your superintendent and asking them for that approval. It's generally done by people who have moved here from other states where they were already homeschooling and then suddenly found themselves, quote, unqualified to homeschool in our state. But it's something that's available to anyone to go in and talk to the superintendent and ask for permission to homeschool in our state to qualify. There they are, the 4 ways to qualify: 45 college quarter credits, take a parent qualifying course, be supervised by a certificated person, that is hiring a teacher to provide oversight, or the superintendent approval. You do have to sign an annual declaration of intent to homeschool. These are due on the 15th of September. On this document, you provide your child's name, your child's age, your name, and your address. And then there's a checkbox on there to say if you have hired a teacher to provide oversight or not. If you start homeschooling in the middle of the year, you should submit this at the same time that you are withdrawing from school. Or if you have a child who's turning 8 during the middle of the public school year, you should submit your first declaration of intent at that point in time. The first one due on the 8th birthday or on the 15th of September if you're starting at the beginning of a school year, and the second and subsequent due annually on the 15th of September. The Declaration of Intent, here's what it is. It relieves the school of their burden to provide your child with an education. So in Washington, we have compulsory attendance. You must attend school between the ages of 8 or 18, or your parents can opt to send you to a private school, or they can opt to homeschool you. But it also provides you with protection from a charge of truancy. The Declaration of Intent, however, is not a request for permission to homeschool, nor is it for children under the age of 8. You do have to each year do a test or an assessment. You have both of these options available to you. For the test, it needs to be a standardized achievement test. It needs to be approved by the State Board of Education and administered by a qualified individual. A standardized test, you'll probably recognize these from your own time if you happen to have come up through the public school system. These are where you are filled in your dot and made your mark heavy and dark. Some standardized tests that you may have heard of would be the CAT, the Terra Nova, the BASI, the Iowa, the SAT, the PSAT, the ACT. These are all standardized achievement tests. It needs to be approved by the State Board of Ed. They've approved anything that has been reviewed by a company called Bureaus, and we have information on our website at washhomeschool.org that leads back to a list of test and testing providers should you want to do that. And then administered by a qualified individual. It is the testing companies who qualify individuals to administer their test. And most testing companies merely require that you be a homeschool parent in the state of Washington if they're selling to Washington parents in order to be that qualified individual to administer the test. The other option is an annual assessment of the child's academic progress written by a Washington State certificated person currently working in the field of education. Here again, you would be hiring a teacher, but if you had a teacher friend or teacher relative, or if you happen to be the parent of a child who holds a Washington State credential and you happen to be teaching, then you could do an annual assessment of the student's academic work and go ahead and provide that assessment yourself. There are 11 subjects that you need to cover, not every day, not every week, or not even necessarily every year, but you do need to cover these 11 subjects over the course of your homeschooling. They include the ELA, the English language, sorry, I have stalled out. ELA in the schools, is English language. So reading, writing, spelling, and language, those four going together that you need to cover. And English language arts, that is what I'm looking for. You could also cover a second or third or fourth or fifth language. Foreign language certainly could be part of it, written or, for instance, assigned language. It could also include computer languages as part of your study of languages, so not limited to English language arts, but perhaps also modern, ancient, and computer languages being other possibilities in that study. Math is the second subject to study, as well as science and social studies. Social studies could also include history and government and civics, etc. History, so often social studies is studied in the lower grades and history in the upper grades. In part, this is because little people have understanding of history that includes 3 time periods. Other children, that is people their age, parents, people who are their parents' age, that is this middle sort of period, and then the things from the beginning of time that include their grandparents, the dinosaurs, the ancient Egyptians, anything from the time before. And so a lot of people study social studies, the study of the other cultures of the world when they're in the younger grades, and then they study history in the upper grades. That is the study of the people and the cultures of the world, including perhaps your own, and their progression through time. Health. We actually have a requirement for health, but we don't have a requirement for PE. Interestingly enough, PE is the #1 class that homeschoolers seek out, despite the fact that in the state of Washington, we're not required to cover it. And you will very quickly, once you homeschool, and of course, if you've been pandemic schooling through any of this, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that when you have these little people in your house, they need to get out, they need to move their bodies, and all of your schoolwork goes so much better and so much easier if you get them out and moving, and then come back in and work on it. But health is a fantastic subject that covers all kinds of things, diet and your body and your growing body. It's a fantastic place in which area in which you can share your worldview with your children on things like human sexuality and how we treat our bodies and why we do the things that we do in the name of health. Occupational ed. This is actually one of the questions I get the most questions about. Jen, what is occupational ed? It's really the study of the fact that there are people in the world and that they have jobs. When they're little, this is a lot of fun. You go out there and you can just ask questions of people when you're out in the world and talking to them, because people love to talk about their work and they love to talk about it with anybody who's interested, even if that person happens to be very small. When my daughter got older, we actually turned around and did a series of internships with small business owners in our area that were really interesting and invigorating, and got her thinking about the sort of things that she would like to do with her life. So all kinds of different things, thinking about all the different sorts of occupations that are out there. You may recall the day in the 3rd or 4th grade when you were in school where the doctor parent, the police officer parent, and the firefighter parent all came in and talked about their jobs at the school. That's occupational ed. And then we have an appreciation of music and art. So you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a musician. You just need to take your kid out there and appreciate some art and appreciate some music. Just that appreciation, going out there during the pandemic. A great thing, of course, is to go do a walking tour of public art, things that are outside. We love going to the museum, and once those are open again, those will be back and available to us. And of course, the library has all sorts of videos and things on some of the wonderful museums that are all over the globe that you won't necessarily be able to just go to in your homeschooling, but that you could visit from afar. And then, of course, the internet gives us access to all sorts of things. And then an appreciation of music as well. I know here in Spokane, we've got kids, KBBX Kids music series. That's a fantastic thing. We get to listen to concerts and then they air them on the air and do them out in parks, and it's a fantastic thing. So just an appreciation of music and art. You don't have to become an artist, don't have to become a musician. Just get out there and really enjoy those cultural things that you have the time and inclination to get to. You do have to keep certain records. Oh, not book kind of records. Ooh, not that kind of records either. More like these kind of records. Your records need to include your test or assessment, your annual test or assessment. Oh, sorry. And then also, if you want to transfer back to public school or transfer to public school from homeschooling, they may also ask you for your immunization records. This is not something you need to keep on hand, but it is something mentioned in the law, and it is part of signing up for school, either part-time or full-time, that you need to have. And then the law says any other educational records that happen to have been kept. Once you have a high schooler, you do want to keep transcripts. That is a list of the courses, the credits, and the grades of the coursework that they do through the high school years, 9th through 12th grade. And then, of course, if you go all the way through with homeschooling and you do graduate your child, you will want to award them a diploma as well, so that they are fully a high school graduate with a high school diploma and with transcripts. I do want to talk ever so briefly about socialization. Socialization is the process of learning and internalizing the values, beliefs, and norms of our social group. This is not the question people are asking when they ask you, what about socialization? If you say, hey, I think we're going to homeschool. And socialization is the process by which we become functioning members of society. So socialization, agents of socializations include family, it includes peers, it includes school, it includes religion, it includes social clubs and groups, it includes government, it includes ethnic background, your media, work. All of these different things are agents of socialization, but it's not the question people are asking. They're asking this knee-jerk question when you say, "Hey, I think I'm going to homeschool," and say, "What about socialization?" I have literally been at a park where my child sat down and talked to a mom who hadn't decided yet if she wanted to homeschool. And they had a conversation for about 20 minutes on a topic of mutual interest. I don't remember what the topic was. And my child, who was about 11 at the time, wandered away to play with the other children. And the mom looked at me and she said, "But what about socialization?" And I said, I don't think I understand your question. You just had a conversation with my child for 20 minutes. What do you feel my child was lacking in? And she said, I don't know. And I think that's just it, that this question is a knee-jerk reaction. And I think I've figured out what people are actually trying to ask. They don't mean socialization. What they mean is socializing. They mean, if you don't go to school, how are you going to make friends? If you don't go to school, where will you find people to be friends with? Because all the children in the entire world are in these big places called schools, which has, of course, not been true this year. And people have suddenly found out, oh, about 4% of the population prior to the pandemic was already being homeschooled. They're asking, won't you be bored because there are no other children in the world? Or won't you be lonely or weird? You might be. Certainly this year with the pandemic, we've all been bored and we've all been lonely. I don't know if you know this, but homeschoolers, we lost everything that was great about homeschooling at the same time that you lost school. We lost our co-ops and we lost our groups and our classes and we lost our museums and we lost the libraries and we lost park dates and play dates. We lost all the same things. We weren't home in the same way that we've all been this year. We were out there in the world doing all kinds of things. So yeah, it's possible that you'll be all these things and that you'll be weird, but probably not. Which brings me to the next thing. There will be gaps in your child's education. If you homeschool them, they're going to have gaps. You know what? Everyone has gaps. I went to 19 public schools before I went to college. I have gaps in my education. Gaps in our education is why Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader was a successful television show for many years. Why? Because we all have gaps in our education. That's going to happen. Now, if you homeschool the whole way through, and we homeschooled from second grade until my daughter was 16 and decided she wanted to begin college full time, she had some very strange gaps in her education. I will share one of those with you. So we have a literary festival in Spokane that's hosted by Eastern Washington University called Get Lit, and it happens in the springtime. And one of the things that was going on during the Get Lit festival was slam poetry by teenagers. And I thought this would be great. Let's go down and see it. At the time, she was doing a lot of songwriting, and I thought this is very similar to songwriting. I think you would enjoy this. So we went down to watch the slam poetry contest, and there were a number of really great slam poetry poets who got up there and shared their poetry. And then there were a number of, I'm going to say it, rather mediocre poets who began before they went to their poetry with, "I'm here because my teacher's giving me some extra credit. Shout out to Mrs. Smith of, my English class." And so we're driving home, and my husband and I are in the front of the car. And from the back of the car, my daughter, who I think was about 13 at the time, she says, "Guys, what's extra credit?" And the two of us burst out laughing. Of course, we had both gone to public school and we knew exactly what extra credit was. But she had no idea because we didn't, as homeschoolers, ever give her extra credit. We just said, here's the work that we're doing and the work that must be done, and here's what we're grappling with. And so we had never actually done extra credit, and she had absolutely no context for it. So you're going to have gaps in the education. And the interesting thing that happens, though, with homeschoolers is they figure out how to fill those in. So when she went to college, she wanted to go into a computer science class, and we had found a test online. Are you ready for this class at the university she was attending? And I said, well, just, fill this out and then go talk with the professor, because it was something that was happening early in the semester. She was transferring in, but after the semester had already started. And I called her a little while later, because I got to the couple of the end pages, and I thought, I have no idea what this math is. And I called and I said, do you know what the math is at the end of this? Because I am not familiar with this math. And she said, oh no. She said, I don't, but I Googled it and I learned how to do it. And then I worked the problem. And then I've got an appointment scheduled tomorrow to go and talk to the professor. And she ended up ultimately transferring into the class and did just fine. Because part of what we did in homeschooling, and you do this by accident or on purpose, it seems to happen regardless of if you intended it for it to happen, is you're teaching your child how to learn. And so the gaps that we have in our education are easily filled in because we've taught them how to learn. Student attendance and ancillary services. You are guaranteed as a private schooler or as a homeschooler in the state of Washington the right and the access to part-time attendance, that is taking classes at your local school, and or ancillary services, which is everything that happens at a school: sports, speech therapy, hearing therapy, the prom, dances, after school clubs, all of the other things that aren't classes. You are guaranteed the rights to access to all of that as a homeschooler or as a private schooler, because you are a taxpayer and you're actually sorry, you're actually sorry, my tongue has just gotten ahead of me. You're guaranteed the right to do this at the same level as if you were a full-time student. So you're not to be put on a wait list in your resident school district. You have the absolute right that's guaranteed by law to have access to these classes. This is not true in most states. It is, however, true in ours. And just bless the homeschoolers who started this law originally, that they really had the foresight to add that in and to say, hey, we're taxpayers and we think we should have access to schools in the same way that our full-time counterparts do. Running Start. You can do Running Start. Running Start is a tuition funding program for 11th and 12th grade students in our state to attend any of our community colleges and 4 of our universities: WSU, Central Washington University, Eastern Washington University, and most recently the Evergreen State University. So all of the community colleges and then those 4 universities, tuition free during the junior year and senior year. It's good for up to 15 credits per quarter, 3 quarters. It doesn't cover the summer quarter, but 3 quarters per year. So you can actually do Running Start and end up with 90 credits. And at the end of your senior year of high school, also be a college junior at that point in time. Tuition. You can homeschool all the way through and you can graduate your child. You decide what it is that you want for graduation requirements. Most people look to the public school graduation requirements as to, having 4 Englishes and 3 maths and 3 sciences and an X number of electives, et cetera, so on and so forth. Some people look at the CADRs, that's CADR, and then it's plural CADRs. It's a list of courses that the universities are looking for from high school graduates and are expecting that they have those as a minimum to be accepted as part of the admissions process into the colleges. You can absolutely graduate from homeschooling. You absolutely do not need to get a GED in order to be a homeschooling graduate. Your child graduates from homeschooling because state law says that public school, private school, and homeschooling are all 3 valid ways to fulfill the compulsory attendance requirements. Your diploma and your transcripts from your homeschooling are every bit as real, every bit as verifiable and have the same veracity as a diploma from a public school or from a private school. Moreover, we're finding more and more that more colleges and universities and more employers are actually looking for homeschool graduates at this point in time, because our kids are interested and interesting. They're engaged and they're engaging. They're, generally speaking, not burned out from school and they're just ready to get in there. And when they go on to higher ed, they want to jump in feet first, and they're really just excited to be doing these different things. And so they've ended up being terrific students. And we now have 36 years of students going out there, forging a pathway for us to follow in of really excellent work and really excellent academics that they've gone on to do. That concludes my intro to homeschooling for you. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate that. And if you have any follow-up questions, etc., again, my name is Jen Garrison Stuber. I'm the advocacy chair with the Washington Homeschool Organization. And I invite you to email me at WHOcontact, so that's WHO contact, at Wash Homeschool. Two H's there in the middle, one for Wash, one for Homeschool.org. Thank you again.